It's crazy just to ask this question. Did the Federal Reserve save our entire banking system? Part of the Federal Reserve unveiling new details of its secret dealings during the financial crisis is showing how heavily Wall Street actually dipped into the Fed's money printing resources. For instance, Bank of America used the Fed's credit program more than 1,000 times, and they weren't alone. So would all those firms have gone under without the Federal Reserve? To our freedom fighters, my Fox Business colleague and friend Elizabeth McDonald, Ayn Rand Institute's Executive Director Yaron Brook, and Cato's Dan Mitchell. You are shaking your head, and I am agreeing with you. Wouldn't we be far better off without the Fed sending money to French and German banks, to McDonald's, to Toyota, to Harley-Davidson, and to Bank of America?
We'd be far better off without a Fed. What we need in this country is what we had before the Federal Reserve, is a true free banking system where banks are responsible. And if they do badly, they fail, they go bankrupt. Why are we so afraid of bad businesses going out of business?
You are an expert on how money is invested and how it translates into the wealth of corporations. So question, why would Toyota, Verizon, Harley-Davidson, McDonald's, no play on word in your last name, get money from the Fed?
And
why
also,
would they want money from the Fed?
Well, also CalPERS and other state union pension funds as well got Federal Reserve help. And Judge, you're asking a very important question. It speaks to the identity crisis I think this country is going through. I mean, we knew that the Federal Reserve was acting like a careening fire brigade, you know, just basically spraying the system, hosing down the problems with all sorts of liquidity. But is this how far we expected it to go? I don't think so. I think it was quite a surprise.
Dan, make for us the argument that this liquidity is nonsense, that the Federal Reserve did not save the lifeblood of the credit markets in 2008, 2009, and again in 2010.
Well, let me try to bend over backwards to be fair to them. It's possible that all the liquidity they put in helped ease the strain of the financial crisis. But let's ask the more important question, why did we have a financial crisis? It was largely because of the Fed. Now, once we get that out of the way, then we have to ask the more fundamental question. Was there crony capitalism underneath all these special deals? Was this not just a case of providing a temporary liquidity? Was this also a case of subsidized credit for the politically well-connected companies?
But, you know, and it's not just the Federal Reserve. It's also central banks around the world. They pumped in at least $5 trillion in liquidity, according to some measures. But you got to ask yourself, if you end the Fed, then who sets interest rates in this country? The president or Congress?
What about the free market setting interest rates?
The markets. The interest rates are just the price at which you clear saving and the demand for money. So the free market sets the price. It's quite simple.
Here's what also upsets me, Dan. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which I profoundly believe is unconstitutional, but nevertheless it is the law, allows the Fed to advance credit to non-banks in the case of an emergency. Guess who defines emergency? The Fed. So they could give money to anyone under any circumstances at any time without the rest of us knowing it, expanding credit, increasing the amount of dollars in circulation, and reducing the value of everything else we own, right?
Well, sounds like I should go offer to mow Ben Bernanke's lawn just in case I need some money. Here's the one key factoid we need to know. Since the Fed was created in 1913, the dollar has lost 95% of its value. I think Yoram made a very good point earlier, which is why on earth do we have this monopoly central bank that is subject to political manipulation, that has eroded the value of our currency?
Yes, and the reason,
Maybe we need a new paradigm.
Yes, and the reason why this matters to taxpayers is because the tax rates and other taxes in the system are not inflation adjusted. So your taxes will go up as the dollar gets devalued. So that is the immorality of what is going on, is it hurts taxpayers in that way. We pay more taxes because of inflation.
It's worse than that, because inflation is a tax.
Absolutely.
Inflation is a tax. It lowers our standard of living.
Right.
It makes all the goods that we purchase more expensive, and it depreciates the value of our assets.
I want the three to hang around during the break. Parenting should be parents' jobs, right? When it comes to kids and your online activity, that's not what the government thinks. Back with my freedom fighters on that one next. Forget the nanny state. We're moving right into the mommy state. The government proposing a law to keep companies from monitoring children's online activity for sites geared for kids. Protecting children is good, right? But my freedom fighters are wondering if the federal government is overreaching its bounds in its attempt to regulate the internet and keep information and control for itself. You're on to you first. Let's just put aside the constitutional issues that the federal government has nothing to do with safety. Right. Private property, children, or adults. What business is it of the federal government if a company wants to follow the websites that children go to in order to make available to the parents of those children things that the children might want?
Absolutely no business. If the parent wants to supervise what sites the child goes to, what products the child is exposed to, then it's the parent's responsibility. It's not government. We are becoming a paternalistic state where we're replacing parenthood with, the nanny state that's going to sit on our shoulder and, have you eaten your vegetables today? That's the food police, the internet police.
Elizabeth, he's saying this in a kidding way, but you and I live in New York City,
yeah, I know,
where the mayor has issued an edict to restaurants about sugar and salt. Shouldn't we be able to make these decisions, sugar, salt, website for children on our own?
The mayor's talking about disclosing the amount of sugar and salt. I would like to know that. And currently, you know what, I disagree respectfully. There is no law that says to consumers and their children, whether or not a cookie has been implanted on their computer and that their computer is then being tracked. I want to know it. I want to know it for my children as well. If my information, my child's information is being tracked via the computer.
Dan, the easiest gateway for the government to regulate information is to do so claiming it's protecting children. What kind of a Pandora's box might be opened if the government could get between the internet service provider and the child?
That's my concern. This will be the camel's nose under the tent. I don't like cookies on the internet. I mean, what business is it of somebody else's? But it's all part of financing this marvelous technological development that has made our lives better. And if we let the government get involved, sure, it'll sound very good in the beginning. Oh, just making sure that your kids aren't getting ads for Captain Crunch or something like that. But sooner or later, we know politicians, we know bureaucrats, they're going to take this little bit of power and expand it.
This is hypothetical.
It's not hypothetical. Everything the government's ever been involved with.
You want consumer consent to know that the cookies are being implanted.
The proposal,
don't turn on the internet.
Hang on a second.
Turn it on.
The proposal is not hypothetical. It was actually introduced on the floor of House of Representatives.
Yes, so you would have consumer consent, and you would know if a cookie was planted.
The consumer consent is when you go on the internet, you know you're being tracked.
No, you do not know. No, you do not know if the cookie is implanted on your computer or your child's computer.
Everybody knows it. We have cookies
people
implanted.
do not know that.
But what we need to do,
they have the right to know.
If you care about it, buy software that hides those cookies. It's very easy to do.
It tells you that they're there.
Why can't the free market address this, Dan? Why should the federal government expand its already enormous lust to control information by doing so in the name of protecting kids?
Well, the free market already does that. Remember how bad spam used to be a couple of years ago? Now we have spam filters. Remember how bad pop-ups used to be? Now that problem is largely solved. Let's keep the idiot politicians in Washington out of this. Let the free market come up with solutions. And for those of us that worry about cookies, we can buy the products that you're talking about.
Elizabeth McDonald.
Sorry, I would agree with that.
Elizabeth McDonald, genius that you are.
I'm not a genius.
Isn't that an appealing argument to you?
That is quite appealing. And he may have sold me. I am going to take a wait and see. He's a very brilliant man, that
You're going to take a wait and see. Here's the problem. The government has tried over and over and over again to regulate the internet in the name of protecting children. Fortunately, the courts keep throwing it down. But Republicans, as well as Democrats, keep trying to do this.
But this is all caused by the fact that we've gotten away from what the purpose of government is. The purpose of government is to protect our individual rights. Marketers tracking our behavior on the internet are not violating our rights.
Well, wouldn't you want to know, if your child was being tracked by a pedophile, wouldn't you want to know that that cookie popped up on the computer?
Yeah, but you could know that using software. You don't need the government.
You could know that using software, and you can know that because if I have a 12-year-old who's on the computer, I need to monitor that 12-year-old. And we always use pedophiles to violate our rights.
No, because it happens.
Dan,
it happens.
Dan Mitchell, you're on Brooke. Elizabeth McDonald, the beloved EMAC, thanks for joining us. Back with the plain truth about what the government really thinks of the truth. Next. Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? Are government workers our servants or our masters? It's often hard to tell. This week, we've been covering the release by the website WikiLeaks of hundreds of thousands of once secret documents that have revealed the truth about what our government and foreign governments have been up to. Some of those truths were already known, like the government is shopping around Gitmo prisoners so it can close the place. Some of those truths were hopeful and optimistic, like the government expects the two Koreas to reunite. Some of those truths were hard and cold, like we are killing people in Yemen without lawful authority, and the Saudis, our supposed allies, are actually financing al-Qaeda. But in all of this, no matter how red-faced Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is over these revelations, you have not heard any denials from the Obama administration that the documents are real, that we learned the truth, and that we now know more truths about the government than we did a week ago. Instead, members of Congress from both parties want to shut WikiLeaks down. Republican Congresswoman Candace Miller from Michigan said that Secretary of State Clinton should just declare WikiLeaks and its founder Julian Assange to be terrorists and be done with them. Democratic and Independent Senator Joe Lieberman from Connecticut even wants to use the military to disable their computers. Are these people crazy? What journalist who came upon government documents that revealed the truth would not publish them? When officials in the government call someone a terrorist because he prints the truth and suggest his property should be destroyed, they are taking us to a very dangerous place. A government that can shut down WikiLeaks can shut down any media organization it hates or fears. That's why we have a First Amendment. Remember that? Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Unfortunately, this saber-rattling works. Just like when Vice President Biden told BP executives to cough up $20 billion to pay for the Gulf oil spill, or the government would just take it from them, members of Congress have intimidated Amazon.com to sever its ties with WikiLeaks. Think about it. What right do the feds have to tell a computer server to drop a customer? And what kind of a government threatens to destroy a small group of journalists who are acting within the law and who reveal the truth? And why do companies from BP to Amazon let the government push them around? Why? Because the government no longer feels constrained by the Constitution, and we all know that. Because the Constitution forces the government to respect speech and private property. It is an obstacle to big government. It is, after all, the supreme law of the land, and those in government have all taken an oath to uphold it. Sadly, very few of them do so. From New York, defending freedom every night of the week. Good night, America.